with the owner avoiding the hard work in order to grow the company because they feel like they don't know how to do it. And the reality is they just have to go and do it. You just have to go and do it and be more committed to the growth goal, more committed to what you're building with your company, more committed to the transformations you're making with your clients than you are to your resistance.
Welcome to the Agency Profit Podcast, a show dedicated to going deep space on agency operations, which is just as nerdy as it sounds. I'm your host, Marcel. I'm the CEO of Parakeeto, a firm that helps digital and creative agencies measure and improve their profitability. Join me as I interview some of the smartest thought leaders and agency owners in our space and go deep into operations, metrics, and all the other things you need to get right so you can spend less time worrying about operations and more time executing on your vision. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Agency Profit Podcast. I'm excited today to be joined by friend of the show, multi-time guest, and friend of mine as well, friend of Marcel's, Mandi Ellefson, who is a prolific author of several great books, the founder at Hands Off CEO, the host of an incredible podcast. I mean, what don't you do, Mandi? This is my off-script intro for you. But for those of you that don't know Mandi, she has been helping the owners of specialized firms charge more, work less, and ultimately scale their business in a way that creates freedom in their lives. And so very excited to have you back, Mandi, today to talk about a very important topic, which is actually doing the things that we know we should do to improve profitability. So welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me again, Marcel. I always love coming on your show. And I hear nothing but wonderful things from you, about you within our colleagues, within your clients. Those same clients come to us and they just have nothing but wonderful things to say about Parakeeto. So it's always such a pleasure to be able to work with you guys.
Well, the experience is mutual. I mean, we've had the fortunate opportunity to work on clients at the same time, at different times, and it's always just good, positive words of affirmation going back and forth about you guys as well. And so with all of that, I want to talk today about something that is very synergistic in that, when we just kind of had this conversation before we hit record, we can help a client get really, really clear on exactly what they need to do to improve their profitability, even show them how much it's going to improve their profitability. But it doesn't really matter unless they can actually go and do it. So today, what we're going to do is kind of go through each of the tactics that you would use to improve your profitability and have you kind of work through the mindset blocks, the tactical blocks, the reasons that founders might not do it or might struggle to do it, even if they know it's the right thing to do. So I'm excited about that. But before we do all of that, for those that have never heard of you before, if there's any of them listening, could you please describe what you do and who you serve?
Sure. So I'm the founder of Hands Off CEO. Like you said, I've got Hands Off CEO podcast, Hands Off CEO book. And for about 12 years, we have been creating transformations for service-based firms, helping them be able to have companies that can run and grow without them profitably and sustainably. So a big part of that is being able to get paid at the high price point that will give you the profitability to actually be sustainable, to be able to hire the people, to have the cash to be able to grow the company. And we help them fit all those pieces together, and it goes in hand with what you guys teach at Parakeeto as well. So really excited to dig in on this.
Yeah, amazing. All right, so we're going to kind of frame this up. The way this episode's going to run, we're going to kind of go through the three main levers for improving profitability, and then talk about the tactics within those levers that would actually allow you to improve that metric. And then we're going to talk about, okay, but what's hard about that? Because that's the rub, right? Is it's simple, right? We can teach you a very simple way to think about profitability and improve it, but that doesn't make it easy. So with that in mind, at Parakeeto, we really talk about three things, and they're the three levers for improving delivery margin. And just as a primer on delivery margin, if for some strange reason you've never heard me talk about it, which is my favorite thing to talk about, delivery margin is essentially the percentage of every dollar that a client pays us that we get to retain and use to invest in overhead, growth, and to pull out as profit after we've basically done the thing that we promised them. So for example, if a client gives me $1 and it costs me 50 cents to build the website or run the ad or design the graphic that they asked me for, then I have a 50% delivery margin, meaning I spend about 50% of every dollar to actually get the work done. So we want to maximize that number. The higher that number is, the easier it is to run the business, the more profit we can have, the more we can invest in all the wonderful things that Mandi's talked about. So what are the 3 ways that we can improve that? Well, there's essentially the first big one is average billable rate. So the question that we answer with average billable rate is, for every hour that we spend doing work for clients, no matter how we've built for it, how much money do we earn? And that's a function of how much we've charged the client versus how much time it takes us to complete the promise that was made to them. And so we have 2 sides to that coin. The first one being charging more money for the same thing, right? So easy to say, not so hard to do. So Mandi, let's start there. Pricing increases. What gets in people's way when it comes time to actually execute on something like that?
Well, there's 2 different parts of it, of being able to charge a higher price point. So many people say, well, charge what you're worth, charge what you deserve. And it's not about your worth or what you deserve. Actually, you might actually be charging a price point that you don't deserve. You might be overcharging your client if you are giving them some deliverables that are not actually delivering results for them. So what we want to look at is, how do we be able to deliver the biggest outcomes? How do we be able to position our services instead around a service is rendered and what we're doing? Instead of that, be able to deliver real transformations, be able to bring a vision to them that they couldn't even imagine on their own. And you be that partner that helps them be able to create something just absolutely incredible. And we've seen that with the same clients you have, a lot of them will pay 50% more, 100% more, 500% more. I've seen this in my own company and also our clients' companies too. When you actually share with them a bigger vision and you share with them a pathway on how you're going to be able to do that, and you're sharing with them, these are the success conditions we need to get to that, then those purse strings start getting opened up, and you can be able to increase the budget, and your clients will be willing to pay a lot more for the same work. So that's like the system side of it, but then there's a mindset of it too. And you really have to be in alignment and be the kind of person who can, if you wanted to have a $20,000 a month offer, for example, you've got to be the kind of person who can make that offer and be able to sell it. You have to become that person. You have to step into that. How you do it, you have to step into it. You know, we have one of our clients that are going through our irresistible offer cohort. It's a 90-day program that we help them be able to double their price point, build an irresistible offer, make it a lot easier to get paid, oftentimes twice as much, usually twice as much, very often much more than that, but for very similar billable hours. And actually, there's one of our clients that are in there that's actually one of your clients too. And we built this irresistible offer. So we did the system, we got that right. But then she's like, well, you know, I need to have this in place before I'll start selling that. And we're like, no, you got to start selling this right now. And so she continued to sell the old thing. And it was because emotionally, she didn't feel confident doing it yet. So we had to unpack that and say, what does it take for you to feel confident in this? And the biggest thing, really, what it come down to is that she just has to choose to step into it. She just needs to be able to develop the courage. How do you develop the courage? You just do it. You just do it. And she happened to have a lot of leads, and that made it a little bit easier to do this, but she's now stepping into that. I'll give you a follow-up on how that goes. But we see that all the time. And there's a system and a mindset that make both of them work. And and that's one of the ways where you get paid twice as much for the same work.
So just to kind of paraphrase, I think the core idea here, it's about shifting the conversation away from what you're going to do, the services you're going to render, the deliverables you're going to produce, towards the outcome or the transformation that you're creating for the client and the value that creates for them. And ideally telling that story in such a way that it creates a high degree of confidence for them that you'll actually be able to get them there, and that the process you're describing is the right path to get there. You've done this hundreds of times with so many of your clients. I think what would really help our listeners is an anecdote on, here's a person that used to sell this thing in this way, and then when we started telling the story in this other way, it helped them double, triple their profitability. So what kind of an example, might resonate?
Yeah, great point. So I'll give you an example of Mark. Mark, agency owner, and he was running into problems. He was getting stuck in the day to day. They were having problems with him being. He pretty much would break every single one of your rules here, right? And a lot of it came down to mindset. And what was happening is they were selling these projects, and between $10,000 and $30,000 projects that then would be upsold to the next project and to the next project. But guess who was upselling these projects? It was Mark. So he was stuck in the day-to-day delivery of it. And it was very much based upon deliverables. Like, we're going to be able to give you this branding these branding projects. And clients loved the work that they did. But COVID came around, and these same clients, these banking and credit union clients, they're a little more on the conservative side. They stuck their head firmly in the sand and said, we're not investing. We're not. And these smaller projects, they said no to. So what we did is we looked at his offerings and said, okay, what is the biggest transformation you can create for the clients? If we have these success conditions in place, like if we were able to bundle this together, that might be an example of one of this. Like, if we were working together over a 12-month period of time, if they gave you the right budget, if they gave it all these, what would be possible for this client? So then we quantified the kind of growth path. He got really excited about this. He said, this is the kind of work I want to do, but most of our clients don't give us the budget for this. So we created this client success map for him. He brought this to his clients, the same clients who said no to these $20,000, $30,000 packages. And he went and sold one $100,000 package and then one $120,000 package within 30 days. It was within, I don't want to misquote it, but it was within a month or two, right? Same clients, right? He just showed them a different vision. He helped them be able to get past that fear of investing in a challenging market. And I think there's a lot of conditions in this market now that are similar to 2020. So I think this is a very relevant example, because it was a 600% price increase and dramatically more profitable because they had longer term engagements now. They didn't see this as this retainer they don't want to invest in. They see this as a growth program. They really want to have part of it. And that's the power of it, is like sharing the vision, looking forward, what's possible, and then showing them the pathway.
Amazing example. And I won't go down our own anecdote, but we had a very similar experience at Parakeeto one quarter where, to your point, we sat back and we asked ourselves, like, if there was no constraints, if we had unlimited time, money to do anything for the client, what would we do that would absolutely change their world? And it was looking at it through that frame that really allowed us to land on this transformative, shift for our business. And we probably increased our price by 500 times. Of course, the scope also increased, but like that, we were more profitable and we were really solving the problem for clients. So that frame is really powerful. So we talked about now average billable rate. We've talked about side one, which is charge more. Side two is be more efficient. So don't, over service clients. Don't spend, an exorbitant amount of time getting things done for them. What are some of the blockers that you find clients run into here on being efficient at delivering outcomes?
Trying to make clients happy rather than actually delivering results. So trying to make clients happy can be leading to scope creep. It's leading to, well, the client they want this and they want that. And they start becoming like a yes man, where they just do whatever the client wants, and almost like an employee in the company. It just gets to be kind of ridiculous. And instead of saying, these are the success conditions that we need to hold to be able to create this transformation, and leading them powerfully. Because when you lead them powerfully, what we've seen with our clients is that not only have they, I'll give you another example from another agency owner where they brought it was the same project they brought to a client. They had a bigger outcome around it. They were able to charge, it was at least 50% more with an existing client. And what they found is, adhering to the success conditions for this, they actually had lower billable hours. So it literally added an extra $100,000 of profit to their company, net profit. So on both sides of that, we did a calculation around it. So when you do that, when you make it be about your outcome, it's easier to adhere to your own process. But when you're making it about making the client happy, you're not going to ultimately make them happy because you're not going to get them the result because you're doing whatever they want as opposed to actually leading them to a result. And that's what creates scope creep.
Yeah. It's such a powerful point. I say to my team all the time, right? Like if clients were capable of getting to this outcome on their own, we wouldn't be working with them, right? The reason that we're working with them is because the decisions they've made in the past led them to this place that they don't want to be in. And there is, some nuance to this, but the natural tension is so much of the consulting process is being a steward for your clients. And often that means pushing back on them. Often it means helping, either saying no to them or helping them rechannel their desires, their wants, their assumptions about how things should be done back towards the process that from experience is going to work. But that takes some confidence, right? It takes confidence to be able to do that. But it's so important because not only will you put a whole bunch of hours into things that don't move the needle, which is not good, but to your point, you might end up missing the thread altogether and actually not getting the client the thing they really want, which is the outcome. And often this reaction of asking for things is their way of trying to make sure they get to that outcome, as misguided as it might be.
Well, and what's happening is that there's a power vacuum there. There's not enough leadership, which is why they keep on trying to direct the process, especially when you have more of the high power business owner, if you're dealing with them. And this all comes down to one root cause issue, though, is that it's people pleasing, but it's actually coming from an emotional need to be liked. So you have to be more committed to the client actually having a transformation than them liking you. And that can be pretty hard for people. And that's something that in our own company, when I'm training our team on this, like they're like, well, I'm supposed to make clients happy. I'm like, no, actually we're supposed to they paid us for a transformation. And you'll notice that I am known to have pretty tough conversations with people sometimes. I'm kind, but I'm very direct. And here's the thing is that they also notice that people tend to like me more for that. And the reason why is because that's taking a stand and it's not letting them off the hook because you care so much. And I am so committed to your result that I don't care if you don't like me for it. Like I am committed to you. I'm not committed to you liking me.
It's the difference between being liked and respected a lot of times. And I can attest to this because we've had you've given me some feedback in the past and it was very candid, but to your point, I respect you more because of it. And I know that was coming from a place of, trying to help make sure that everyone's performing at their highest level. And so I think that's a super important point, and one that I think we can all learn from a little bit. So we've covered off the first major lever, average billable rate, increasing average billable rate, either by charging more. We've talked about some of the ways in which people are challenged with that. And we've talked about getting more efficient and not over servicing clients, making sure we stick to, a low number of hours or the most efficient path to getting those outcomes. The next thing that often people struggle with is utilization. So in other words, they have a certain amount of capacity. That's people on their team that they've hired and that they're paying a salary to. And there's a certain amount of their time being utilized for things that earn the business revenue, getting things done for clients. And often what we end up with is an imbalance there. There's just not a high enough percentage of that capacity that's being used to earn revenue. So often the fix for that is two things. Number one, getting that team busier with revenue earning activities. So selling more and actually resourcing that team. And the other side of that is letting people go if that's not in the cards for you in the short term, and right sizing the team to the amount of work that you have. So we'll start with right sizing the team. This is a conversation a lot of people are having right now in this particular market. It's a lot of uncertainty. That's, again, a simple thing, but very, very hard to do. Often the worst nightmare of many business owners. So what gets in people's way when it comes time to right size the team?
Well, you have somebody who's given their heart and soul to your company over the past, however many years. Maybe they brought the company to where it's at, and you know that they've contributed to the company, and maybe they're not the right fit for the next stage of the company. Maybe they are not hitting their KPIs, and they're not actually delivering the results that they were hired for. So it's really difficult to on an emotional level to let go of somebody who almost feels like family. They're not family, because in a business, this is a transactional relationship. You stop paying your employees, they will stop showing up. There is a transactional relationship there, right? So so let's not delude ourselves to think that it is a family. We have to make decisions based upon what's best for the company, and we need to remember that when we are keeping people on. And one of the things that's close to that, and I see this all the time with salespeople. It's one of the most insidious ways that I see this, is that salespeople will not be hitting KPIs, and no one's holding them accountable to hitting the KPIs, because what happens is that, and that's assuming they even have KPIs to be able to hit to, which most of the time they don't. But if the CEO actually goes and holds them to account, then now they're stuck in this place of like, oh crap, I have to go do that now. And so what's going on is they're abdicating responsibility on that, so that they don't have to face the fire and the result of, I have to go and do this now. And the same thing happens, it could be with a team member that, if you let go of this person, you as the owner are going to have to jump back in, or maybe you as the manager have to, and that's painful. That's painful. It's, you take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And it's just, and this is the point where you just really have to look at, what are we building? What are we building? We're building a $12 million company that has this 50% profit margin. If you're building, that's just an example of one, right? And is this person going to build us to that level? Is this person aligned with that? And you have to ultimately be more committed to the vision that you're creating than to sit with this dysfunction, and to allow your team to sit with this dysfunction.
Do you want some free resources to help you measure and improve your profitability? If you do, then I want to tell you about our agency profitability toolkit, which you can grab absolutely free in the show notes, or by heading to parakeeto.com/toolkit. It's packed with training videos, cheat sheets, templates, and all kinds of other great resources to help you start measuring and improving the essential metrics that are going to drive better profitability in your business. And it's helped thousands of other agencies around the world do the same. So I want to encourage you to go and grab a copy of that. And if you'd rather get in the fast lane and just have our team of experts guide you through the process of measuring and improving your profitability, then I want to encourage you to apply for a consultation at parakeeto.com. And with that, I want to thank you again for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the episode, and I'll let you get back to it. Certainly in the context of underperformance, that's a critical component. The other situation that I think a lot of people are facing right now is, the market is uncertain, clients are canceling, there's not as much business coming through because no one's spending money, because God knows what's going to happen next month or the month after that. Nobody has any idea. We're recording this on March 26th. There's a lot of things changing right now in the economy. And so now it's a question of, everybody on the team is great. No one deserves to get let go. No one's underperforming, but we still need to right size the business for fiscal responsibility, and ultimately to protect the people, to protect the business and the people that are going to remain in the business. We have to make the decision. We have to make it before it's too late, to preserve cash, to be able to give these people a reasonable severance. And so that is an even more difficult moment, because often it's like, these people don't deserve, air quotes, to be let go. There's no objective reason, but it's still the decision that as the business owner, you're accountable to make.
Well, so I would frame this in a little bit different way, because before I looked at that, I would say, what would it take for me? How much, what's the gap here? What do we need to make? Is it a $30,000 a month gap, for example? And I'd say, okay, 30,000, how many new clients do we need to bring on for that? Or how much extra revenue do we need to bring on to be able to hit that? And I would go through the lowest hanging fruit opportunities. And by the way, anyone who's listening who is a Parakeeto client, we have a whole we have a course that it's $1,000 course you get for absolutely free. As a Parakeeto client, I'll give you access to this for free. But there's 3 top ways to be able to generate new business really fast. And one of them is current and past clients and looking at what's the bigger vision. I talked about that. What is the bigger vision you could bring to them? Having the conversation, I see this possible for you. Just like Mark did. He shared that with the same clients, and he was able to go from them basically canceling to them going and doing 6-figure engagement. This was the same kind of market here. In fact, it was even more scary for companies at that time. But so he took a stand and he dug in, and he was able to bring in the business so that he was able to not only maintain his team, but he was able to actually grow his team. So I would say first look from a place of abundance, and look at how can you increase the value of your existing clients. Go to past clients, share, this is the things that we're seeing working right now in this market. Would you like me to share this? And you open up a conversation. This is what I see as possible for us working together on this. You already have trust built, and we're talking, you can start making those work tomorrow. Your next client conversation, you can open up the conversation. I have another idea. 4 words. I have another idea. So one of the things is like getting in the energy of like creating it done, standing in the future as if it's already done and making it happen. And when you get really good at being able to unlock the lowest hanging fruit in your company, what can happen is that you can see a massive swing over the course of 1 month. And I know it because I've done it. I've done it multiple times. One of our clients who got to this point where she was like, we're going to have to start letting some people go. She'd had some challenges with her health and with some death in the family. And she went and the team wasn't selling. And we had a conversation and got her head straight, and it's got $1.2 million of sales to close in 2 months that were just sitting there. So I'm saying like you could and the power that came from this woman, what she was able to do this was incredible. It's like you can make it rain in your company if you're standing in that future. So that's on one side of it. I know that there's the other reality of it too. If you, do you want to just say something about that? Marcel, you're like, all right, Mandi, let's be realistic here.
Well, no, I mean, I agree with you. The first place to start is trying to close the gap. And I would encourage people to go check out that resource. Again, if you're a client of ours at Parakeeto, then reach out to our team, reach out to Mandi. We can get you access to that. But that is, of course, the first step. Can you close the gap with sales? Unfortunately, sometimes you just can't do that, and you do have to right size the team. And one thing that I shared, we did an episode on this actually just recently on the podcast about right sizing the team. One kind of strategy that I've seen other people use is trying not to keep too much cash in the business. This is actually a bit of an interesting one, but it's like if you have 9 months of cash reserves in the business, it's a lot easier because you see it as the business's money to just wait and delay and go far too long without actually making the necessary adjustments in the business, and you can lose a lot of cash that way. And so if you keep just the right amount of cash in the business, usually somewhere between 3 and 5 months worth of business expenses, and you pull the rest out as distributions to you, then you're forced to loan the money back to the business in order to continue to fund hanging on to those staff members. And that's just a little psychological trick in that it really forces you to evaluate, like, do I personally want to fund hanging on to these people? And if you feel that strongly about it, then very likely that's your prerogative. That's close to your values. Maybe you have an objective reason for doing that. But that forcing function I find is very powerful because it is your money. It's just that the nuance of where it is, what bank account it sits in, can change your analysis of that and make it maybe a little less objective than it should be. So that's just a little kind of hack, if you will.
I think that's great because you're actually looking at the reality of it, and you're looking at this and saying, this money is coming from my kids' college fund. And it's really important to pull the money off the table, because if you don't pull the money off the table in a business, then you don't have any wealth. You don't have any capital to actually go and make the investments so that you actually can be wealthy. And especially with service-based companies like agencies, like it is a cash flow business that you want to be able to make sure that you're making enough money that you can go and put it away, allow it to build so that you can be wealthy, whatever happens to your business later on. Ideally, you go and sell it, but there's a lot of companies that never sell, right? So making sure that you are taking money off the table.
Okay, so we've talked about utilization. We've kind of talked to both sides of this now. We've talked about letting people go, right? Again, simple, not at all easy. Some thinking to do around that. We've also talked about keeping them busy. So part one of that is actually going out and getting more work. You've talked about some of those low-hanging fruit opportunities to get those gaps closed in the short term. The other side of that we sometimes run into is when people get used to being not busy, and then they get up to what is actually a normal or expected level of busyness, it can sometimes come with this psychosis of like, this isn't possible, even though maybe it was happening before. Or sometimes it's because, well, they took on all these side projects or internal things, and now they're not deprioritizing those things to make time for the work, or they got used to doing things inefficiently because they could get away with it before because there wasn't that much work. And so there's all these reasons why you might find your team starts to flare up when you start getting closer to your utilization targets, and it feels emotionally different in the company than it did even when you were there before. So, any notes on that, Mandi, this kind of how to manage team busyness getting up to that previous level when people start to get a little scared of that?
What I have found is in every business, there's like, especially the ones that are totally maxed out in capacity, there's always 20% more capacity that's right there. And I may be going ahead to a point on this, on better utilizing the team. It just comes down to, it's like at a doctor's office, the doctor doesn't answer the phone. They don't take the weight. They don't take all the vitals and everything. All of that's done by different people. And then the doctor comes in and does the diagnostic work and is there for 15 minutes or less. And you're able to optimize each skill set in the value and and optimizing for the bottlenecks, basically. So one of the things that's important about that is for each resource to know what their most important work is. So that's where the system is like, what's our job number one on this? And oftentimes I'll give you an example of the CEO on this. A lot of times the CEO needs to be going and doing the selling work. And I've seen this in our irresistible offer cohort come up too, where they're like, I'm just got really busy, pulled back into operations. We always ask when we get started, like, where do you stop? Where do you usually stop? And a common answer is like, I go and I get busy in operations because I'm trying to avoid this hard work that has a lot of uncertainty, and I don't know if it's going to work, and I don't know how to do it. And so what is there? There's a lot of going on with the owner avoiding the hard work in order to grow the company because they feel like they don't know how to do it. And the reality is they just have to go and do it. You just have to go and do it and be more committed to the growth goal, more committed to what you're building with your company, more committed to the transformations you're making with your clients than you are to your resistance.
Yep. Yeah. And so you're leading to the last piece, right? Which is average cost per hour. So I think the key point you've touched on here, right? Which is as utilization starts to go up, oftentimes one of two things is true, or both of these things are true, that causes people to feel busier than they actually are, in some ways. One is they've taken on a whole bunch of things internally in that downtime that actually need to get deprioritized, but those conversations often are not happening objectively. And so sitting down to take an inventory of all the things that are taking up their time legitimately and saying, hey, these are no longer a priority because we have more client work to do. So let's, wind those things down, put them on pause, get them delegated, whatever the case might be, so that you have time for this. And then the other thing is, this is where time tracking becomes so helpful, is if you start to notice like, oh, hey, when we're not that busy, the average amount of time it takes to get these things done goes up by 20-25%. That's another conversation to say, hey guys, let's go back to the efficient way of doing things. We're constrained now, like try to right size the scope creep. And then the third piece that you're touching on now is the last lever. We've talked about average billable rate and utilization. The last lever for improving profitability is average cost per hour, which is really paying attention to how expensive is the labor that's doing the things in the business, and this tendency of leaning on really senior, expensive, experienced people to do things that really they should not be doing, that could be done by more junior, less experienced people. But there's often a lot of things that get in the way of that. It could be, fear of letting go. It could be not really having great processes or documentation, not having the right instrumentation to actually monitor performance, because you might feel that it's riskier to give this to lower level people. So there's all kinds of things here, Mandi. When it comes to creating that leverage that you talked about at the doctor's office, having other people that aren't the experts doing the tasks that they could be doing, what do you find gets in people's way of creating that leverage?
I think you described very well a lot of the things that get in the way. And I think you're right. Tracking time really makes a big difference on that. And I can tell you how we go about it. And again, there's a system and a mindset. And the system is around how we do what we call as who does what exercise. And everybody goes and tracks their time. It's on a spreadsheet. Each person has their own tab where they're going through and listing off all the things that they do based upon time tracking. And then they're going and they're categorizing it based on, is it $5 an hour work, $50 an hour work, $500 an hour work, or $5,000 work? And your highest level resources need to be staying in the $5,000 an hour work. And that's I don't need to even go through. I think everybody can kind of get an idea of what that means. But but there's some people that are going to be in your $5 to $50 an hour work, and it just starts to be, the hierarchy becomes pretty clear, and you start saying, who can I delegate this to? And that's also on there. And what would it take? What do I need in order to delegate that? And being able to get that off your plate, more than anything, it's a mindset shift of what is more important here. Is it more important for me to be focusing on going out and speaking, or is it more important for me to be taking on this task that, there are 3 other people in the team could do? Or maybe there's no one on the other team, no one on the team who can do it. But like, what does it take for me to do that? What does it take for me to be able to, what is the missing process here that allows us to be able to have these proposals go out at this time and have a review process in place? That's a real example of one of our clients that we found in 20 extra hours per week by breaking some of these things down.
All tremendous points. So you mentioned the time audit, essentially, framework for this. If you want to read a great book that walks through some of these ideas, Buy Back Your Time. Good friend Dan Martell will leave a link in the show notes. And this is one I encourage you to get people on your team to read, especially those that are stepping into positions where they need to be delegating more. I found that this is also a thing, is not a lot of people have developed the skill of delegation. And if you've never delegated before, it's a scary thing. And it can really feel like, especially when something's a little bit complicated, you can feel like, man, how could somebody else possibly do this? It's really hard to wrap your head around the idea that other people really can do these things. So teaching people how to delegate. The other thing I'll mention is my good friend Allison at Operations Agency. I mean, we're clients of hers, and there's other ways to do this, other providers to do this, but they've been amazing. Anybody on our team can just record themselves on Loom doing anything, and then they turn it into this beautiful written step-by-step guide. And it really takes a lot of the friction out, because that could be another thing, is they're like, well, I could sit down for 5 hours and write out this document on how to do this thing, or I could just do it in 5 minutes. And it's hard to make those investments, especially when they're already busy. I found that can be a real mindset block. And then the last piece, you mentioned this is really important, is the current process might be hard to delegate. That might say more about the process than about how inherently hard that thing is, right? And so, like, the whole philosophy here is the less judgment is required to get a task done, the less that labor should cost. Generally, judgment correlates to experience correlates to cost. That's a generalization, but it tends to be true. And so how can you lower the amount of judgment required? Is it better, cleaner process? Maybe you have to simplify that process. Maybe you have some technology that you can implement. Like, what are ways to create that leverage? And a mentor of mine, actually, as Dan once said, 80% done by someone else is 100% fucking awesome. And so there's also sometimes this macro analysis of saying, will it be as good as if I did it, or if this senior person did it? No. Will it be good enough? Yes. Will this amount of leverage be significantly more beneficial to the company than the 20% regression in quality that we might experience by simplifying this framework or giving it to someone else? Yes. And so sometimes you need to be willing to accept a little bit of compromise in order to get to that next place. So my musings on this topic.
Well, and that's the best way to start, is to get 80% out of that, and asking, what is it going to take to get out of the 80%, the 20% that requires more judgment. And then and that's how I was sharing, we helped this one CEO get 20 hours back from his week. And this was like the second time we did this because it all came back to him again, is that we just said, okay, what's keeping you stuck in the day to day? And we didn't even go through that whole exercise because he's a private client and I was just working with him and just started asking these questions as he was driving back from a conference. So like the guy has no time, right? So then we're breaking it down. This is the way. Well, how much time is that? Well, actually, it's about 15 hours per week. And he didn't know that until you actually stop. You have to look at what is the real impact of me taking this on here. And then when we just start, what does it take? What are the components of it? What are the pieces that impact making this decision? And then when you take that and the next problem, and actually, like while he was driving, I said, okay, I'm gonna just send this email over to your operations manager, and I recorded a quick video, sent it off to her, and then she's going and implementing that right away. And that's the power of having a really good operator, is that you don't have to be the one who does that. And it doesn't have to be such a mindset constraint, because once you shift it, you just can pass it off to someone who could help you build out the systems and processes. And then you're out at 80% of it and you keep on optimizing it.
So we've talked about a lot of important things here today, Mandi. We've talked about some of the mindset shifts around increasing average billable rate, improving utilization, and lowering average cost per hour, the three main levers for profitability. We could talk for a lot longer, but we don't have a lot longer. So for those that want to go deeper, where should we send them in the show notes if they want to follow your work and what you're doing at Hands Off CEO?
Well, if you would like to learn how to be able to scale your business by getting paid a lot more for the same work, you can go to handsoffceo.com/checklist, and then it will actually share what is the order to be able to remove yourself from the day to day, and also is a summary of our book there. So handsoffceo.com/checklist. And but if you like the whole book, I would recommend to just go buy it. You can go to our website, get it at handsoffceo.com/book. $4.99 gives you the audio version too. I know that Parakeeto clients have really enjoyed the book, is what they've shared with us. So, and if chapter 8 and 9 will tell you exactly how to be able to double your prices. And that right there will take care of your profitability issues.
So we'll have links to the checklist, the book, as well as Mandi's podcast and socials in the show notes. We'll also leave a link to Buy Back Your Time, that other book that I mentioned. And I'll also leave a link to the Agency Profit Toolkit if you want to learn more about those three numbers that we talked about today: ABR, utilization, average cost per hour. And if there's anything else that you need, then come and find us on LinkedIn, connect with us. I love to nerd out on LinkedIn. I know, Mandi, you're pretty active there as well. And with all of that, I can't thank you enough for coming back. It's always a pleasure to have you, Mandi. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, Marcel.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you've ever found yourself thinking, man, I get so much value from this podcast, I wish there was something I could do to return the favor. Well, today's your lucky day, because you can leave us a review wherever you're listening to this, and it is incredibly helpful. Of course, if you haven't grabbed a free copy of the Agency Profit Toolkit, go and get that. It's got tons of free resources to help you improve your profitability. If you're looking to get in the fast lane and get help from experts to improve your profitability and measure your most important metrics, then apply for a consultation at parakeeto.com. We'd love to chat with you and figure out how we can help. With all of that, thank you so much for being a listener, and we will see you on the next episode.